The fallen leaves tell a tale of the lands between and the great Elden Ring. The great Elden Ring which was shattered in an age long forgotten. An age which brought about a tale of endless war that led to bloodshed and blight. A raging war between the demigods that no lord arose from. A war that left only destruction and abandonment by the greater will.
Rise now, ye tarnished, ye dead who yet live, warriors of ages long forgotten, Guy, the raging berserker, Brewer, the accursed bloodhound knight, the loathsome prophet of blood, Liam, and the ageless king, Connor. And you, viewer, a tarnished of no renown, claim thy title as Elden Lord. The call of long-lost grace speaks to us all. Go forth and spread thy names in the ashes and the stars. Let the frenzied souls of the land between know of the Elden Ring.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to our Elden Ring episode. God, I have been waiting for this episode, in particular, for a long time now. I'm gonna get this out of the way. Elden Ring is one of my favorite games of all time. I think it is one of the best open worlds ever made, and I think it deserves all the glazing it gets. This is a fantastic game, and God, I am so glad we were finally covering this. Oh boy, oh boy. So boys, I have a question for y'all. My other tarnished. What do y'all think of Elden Ring?
Masterpiece.
As you said earlier, I believe it gets all the glazing that it deserves, mainly from you.
God does glaze Elden Ring a lot.
I
Deservingly,
think
though.
that game is pretty awesome. You get to go and become the Elden Lord. What other game lets you do that? None.
Is there any other game that calls you maidenless and then you get maidens by the end?
Don't know.
Not that I can remember.
Literally, I'm not even kidding. If you want to like trim down the plot of Elden Ring to like a few words, it's get bitches, get married, become
Get
king.
bitches.
That's pretty much it.
Get bitches, get power, get money.
Actually, though, that is actually the plot of Elden Ring. But I guess before we continue on with what like the discussion from there, I think we need to do a brief summary of Elden Ring. So, for those who do not know and have been living under a rock for like 2.5 years at this point, Elden Ring is From Software's new magnum opus. It is their most recent Souls-like game, which is typically a genre filled with video games that are notorious for having pretty hard, difficult combat, and also a stat progression system that allows you to use currency to increase your level. It is their most recent Souls game. It came out in 2022, and it blew up. Undoubtedly, their most successful video game, which is crazy because they have already been a successful developer thus far and have sold millions upon millions of copies of their other games prior to this. But like this game just blew up for them. It is insane how successful this game did. 25 million copies, I think, by the time we're talking right now.
Oh yeah, 25 million. It's probably gonna be 30 million by the end of the year. Like I'm just saying, I genuinely think we'll get 30 million by the end of the year.
It would not surprise me.
And the reason for that is very soon, after 2 years, we are getting DLC for this game, the Shadow of the Erdtree, which is a $40 expansion, which is going to have as much content as a lot of AAA games these days, which is just insane for a DLC.
As of recording this, we are about a little bit
A
more
week
than
away.
a week. Yeah, a little bit more than a week away of like it coming out. We still do not know that much about the DLC, and I'm actually kind of glad for that. God, it's crazy because like I've never experienced a as I've been a fan of them, I've never experienced a DLC for a Souls game come out because like all the times I played other Souls games, DLC has already come out, so I play it immediately. But it's so much fun because I get to play this DLC as it's coming out and explore shit with other people. But like, I want to ask y'all how hype are y'all for this DLC? Because oh my lord, oh my lord, I'm so excited for this.
I know I've said this before, but like with a lot of games and DLCs, like I'll usually like wait a little bit for sale or something, unless if I'm really wanting to. Elden Ring's DLC is one of those few games that like I am going to be getting day one because I am that excited for it. That and the copy of Elden Ring that I bought was pre-owned just because like when I first got my PS5, I had some credit to put towards a game. The only copy of Elden Ring they had was a pre-owned one, so I got that. So I'm just gonna say I am happy now that I can support the devs with my $40 for the DLC, because God, do I feel like I kind of robbed them by just buying pre-owned for Elden Ring, because it is a damn masterpiece.
This game won Game of the Year 2022 with like the other big contender for getting that spot being God of War Ragnarok, which is pretty big as like an achievement. Like FromSoft have won Game of the Year awards before with their other games. The primary one I'm talking about is Sekiro Shadows Die Twice. But it's crazy to me that this game, above all odds, won so much of the Game Awards and got the title of the Game of the Year, which I think it deserved, frankly. I love God of War Ragnarok. That is also one of my favorites. But Elden Ring is just that game. It's just built different. It's that game. You know what I mean?
Elden Ring was just a phenomenon. Like, don't get me wrong, I've also played Ragnarok beating it, loved it, amazing game. But Elden Ring legitimately changed the industry for a while.
We're kind of
It
seeing
probably
this
still,
right now,
still,
actually.
still is. They put out a game in a climate where every other game developer was getting bashed for putting out unfinished games with microtransactions or saving things for later so they could turn it into paid DLC. And Elden Ring's just like, spend $60 and get a masterpiece of a game that has all the content you could ever wish for, and that's it. They just made a finished game. They made and finished a game and then sold it, and that was it. And now 2 years later, they're like, we have more we want to do, and we're gonna charge you $40 for it, but it's going to be worth it.
Honestly, too, like if this was a DLC that had just been rushed out after 6 months or even a year, then yeah, I think $40 would be high. But like 2 whole years after the game, like a lot of hype died down for the game during that time. But a lot of it is just coming straight back now because Elden Ring is just that good of a game. So now everyone's very excited for this DLC because the trailers they've shown so far look really good. For like lore reasons, there's a lot of characters we didn't have a lot of resolutions on that we're gonna get to probably see more of now. And also, we're just gonna have the ability to get our ass kicked again by brand new bosses.
I cannot
That is
wait.
true.
I can't wait for like the first day of DLC, and then to see people like, bro, what do you mean I have to defeat Moog in order to get to the DLC? What is this? Because you know it's gonna happen.
Oh yeah, that is gonna happen. But I'm okay with
I mean,
it because it just you first.
I was just gonna say the developers have put out multiple times. Like people, if you are watching this and you haven't beaten Moog yourself, the developers themselves have said if you want to access the DLC, you must beat Radon and Moog. Like those are the 2 bosses you have to beat. Then you can go to the Land of Shadows. which
I'm okay
I'm
with that,
waiting for
honestly.
like all the achievements for like Moog to go up super high. Like Radon's is pretty high because he's like an early boss, but like Moog is meant to be fought much later on. So like I'm waiting to see like that like 30 something percent it's on like most platforms to go up to like 40 or 50 on like the 21st.
Probably. That'd be a lot. That'd be really funny. But moving away from the DLC because I know we all are very excited about it. But I want to talk about the base game a little bit. This was a very big shakeup for a Souls game. How the best way to describe it to someone who has played the other Souls games before, but also not played Elden Ring, which I don't know how you haven't. But I would say this is Dark Souls 3, but open world. And for those who have played Dark Souls 3, you would understand what I mean by that. But like case in point, they took the Souls formula, which typically like was linear dungeon crawling, like a dungeon crawler with like design levels and like had an intended way for you to play it. They made it into an open world of all things, and it worked, which
I
you
think
wouldn't think it would.
I think the reason why, at least for me, the reason why I like it being open world and why it works is that for a lot of games that are Souls like and based on those, there will usually be like really tough bosses that you just cannot get through because you're just not being able to beat them for various
Skill
reasons.
issue, yeah.
Well, I mean, usually yes. But I like in Elden Ring, if you're having trouble on a boss, you can just say, okay, fuck you. I'm just going to go explore for like an hour or two. And then you can just go and mess around with the world and find new things and items that might help you instead of constantly having to throw yourself against the boss hoping you can get lucky and maybe beat him. And I
That's
think
actually
that's why I like
you
it. At least for me, that's why I really like it because one example was I think the first fight, Margit, usually the first boss that most people are going to run into. I was really struggling with him when I first playing the game, and so I just went out and explored a bit, and I found some weapons and got some runes, and I went back and fought him and beat him in like 3 tries.
hell even earlier than that. When you leave the hero's grave where your player character crawls out of, the first fucking enemy that you encounter is is a tree sentinel, which for those who don't know, that is a mini boss that is meant to be fought in late game, like mid to late
Uh,
game. But they just throw
uh,
one right outside of the hero's grave where your spawn point is. But the thing is, the game doesn't like give you a direct like text message saying this, but it indicates it through like geography and just like everything you've learned up to that point. You don't have to fight it. You can just go right past it and still progress, which I think was just one of the most important philosophies when they were designing this game of make things accessible, let people play how they want, and it worked. Like
yeah,
not really a flaw of the past Souls games, but more so just like how they were designed. You were meant to go into certain levels a certain way with a certain level, like with certain dungeons with certain levels and certain stats like as an intended route. But with Elden Ring, the line between intended route and play your own way is a lot more blurry this time around, which I love.
yeah, because you can do things like super out of order. Like one of the main things in the game and like the plot is that there's these demigods that are bearing shards of the shattered Elden Ring. So there's a usual list of bosses you go to first. Like the main one most people try to go for first is Godric the Grafted, because he's the weakest shard bearer of all. But the thing is what I assumed is like was a required boss that like I had to beat because like that's when I unlocked the second area in the game, Lernia. I was like, okay, so it's semi-open world. I fight Godric and then I can go to the rest of it. I was looking around, I found a teleporter, and it put me into this hell of a place called Caelid.
I know what
And
you're talking about.
yeah, no, I think we all went to that same teleporter because everyone has that experience where they go to Caelid, and the first thing in their mind is like, okay, let's leave. This place sucks.
I hate Caleb.
I know. I think. Wait, are you talking? Did you go outside Caelid? Because the first teleporter I went to, I remember I went to the mines, and I was like, "This is. I'm in hell. I must be punished for
I
trying
know
to
that
open a
teleporter
chest."
as well. That one teleports you to a mine in Caelid. Either way, both of them are in Caelid, which is the most loathsome area in the game. Like in tone, atmosphere, and enemies, and Scarlet
Hey.
Rot.
They really want you to know that this is not a good place to be. It is also, it might be my favorite area in terms of like lore and like enemy variety and all that.
Oh yeah, definitely. Though it
I
is
can
still a
see
very
that,
harsh
yeah.
area.
Oh, it's harsh as fuck. Like they don't want you to win, like at all.
Yeah.
They want you to suffer.
I
Yeah.
remember.
That's just the entire game, to be fair.
I remember one time I was watching Guy like stream Elden Ring, and he was in Caelid, and he spent like a solid 20 minutes continuously trying to get his runes and dying to the same like giant bird, and it was really funny.
Because
That does
those
sound
birds
really
are
funny.
annoying.
Yeah. Well, I think going back to what I was saying though, like you have the options to like go to those higher level areas and play at whatever pace you want. Like for instance, I took down one of the main bosses in the game, Fire Giant, and I didn't know what to do after that. So I was kind of confused where to go, and I ended up doing a quest line to fight Moog. I was not meant to fight Moog at that level, but somehow I thugged it out, and then I got rewarded for it with a shit ton of runes.
Yeah, that's
True.
crazy because like Moog is supposed to be like one of the like late game bosses you're supposed to fight. Hell, if anything, like I think you're supposed to fight him like after you fight the final boss. Like I think that's what he's meant for like scaling wise. So for you to find him and fight him like immediately after Fire Giant is just insane to me.
Yeah. Well, the funny thing too is I was also underleveled for Fire Giant, so I went into Moog and I was underleveled as well because I think I was like barely level 100.
Yeah,
That's hilarious.
that reminds me of the final boss fight and what I learned after. So for those who don't know, when I was recently beating the game, I went into the final boss and I struggled a lot. It took me, I think, maybe close to 25, 30 tries. And after I beat it, I messaged the four idiots that are here right now, including myself, and I was like, I beat the final boss, and Guy asked, hey, what level were you? And I was like, oh, 112. And he's like, dude, you're supposed to be like level 140. So that was a
Now,
great thing to learn.
that might also be because of the build you were running, which I want to transition to next. The build variety and the complexity of
Well,
combat in this video game.
yeah, I was gonna say, I feel like we should go over combat first before we go over builds.
Well, combat and builds go hand in hand, so
Yeah.
I think it works. It's fine.
So, the main thing in Elden Ring, there are essentially two things that you need to know. The dodge button and your light attack and your right attack button. You can beat the
That's-
game with those three buttons, and guess what? You better learn them quick because that's how you're going to be playing this game for, what, 170, like 70 hours, 100 hours, depending on how long your playthrough is? Yeah.
Remember when I can't remember his name, but the like lead developer of Elden Ring said the game was gonna take like 30 hours?
Oh, Miyazaki? Yeah, no, he was wrong.
That man's a liar in so many fronts.
I love Miyazaki. He's probably my favorite game director. But getting back into gameplay, it obviously takes its DNA like not so subtly from the other Souls games. And this is what I meant by it's Dark Souls 3 but open world, in the fact of like if you've played one of the other Souls games before, this you know what you're getting. You know exactly what you're getting, and that is a great thing to have because the combat system just works. Basically how the combat works is that with your weapon, you have your right-handed equipment and your left-handed equipment. Usually the left-handed equipment is meant for shields, but you can put other weapons on there if you want to do more attacks. You usually use your right-handed weapon for your main damage. With that, you attack with your R1 or right bumper to do light attacks, and then your right trigger for heavy attacks. this is pretty much the main concept of the game of you have to use these attacks in tandem to defeat any enemy. But what makes the gameplay so complex is how it's how do I put this? It's simple yet complex in the fact that the game gives you many options and many weapon types to mess around with to fit the playstyle that you want and how you want to approach the bosses in the video game.
I
So
think
yeah.
the best way I could describe that, like, simple yet complicated, I think if you just look at your attack set itself, like for any individual weapon, I would say it's pretty simple. You got a light attack, a heavy, and then a lot of weapons will have a special L2 attack. But I think what makes it complex is like there being so many weapons to choose from. Like, it is overwhelming how many different weapons you have at your disposal, because like almost all of them are viable too, since they all get upgraded to max level that can put them in a similar area.
Yeah, I
But
think
that
it's like
Weapons are viable, which is insane to me because like there's over 300 weapons in this game. There are
yeah,
still weapons that like I do not know about because of how many there are and how big this game is.
yeah.
and I want to say there's maybe like 367 somewhere around there.
Yeah, I think you're
And
probably right.
those weapons are only going to increase. But speaking of weapons, we've talked mostly about weapons, and how they're very different. You have every single person has a playstyle that can fit them. But what's so cool about this game is that every weapon that every person uses can also be used extremely different because of Ashes of War.
That is
And Ashes of
yeah, you first.
Ashes of War is one of the coolest mechanics where basically almost every weapon has a skill that it can use with left trigger, left bumper, left trigger.
Left trigger. Left bumper is guard.
And yeah, left bumper is guard. Left trigger, and with left trigger you can use an Art of War that can do anything from like let you like move very quickly in a direction to like spin your sword multiple times, or like big heavy attack, or like buff yourself. There are some crazy Ashes of War, and a lot of weapons either have a signature Ash of War, or you can put on an Ash of War on that weapon, and it allows you to completely change the way that a weapon works. Where a weapon that was like a very fast hitting, like quick hitting weapon, but probably doesn't do a lot of poise damage, you can put on a move that does a lot of poise, so now you have a more versatile weapon. Or for me, I had the Godskin Peeler, which is a twin blade, and it had you could like spin it around and make a black flame tornado. So many weapons are so cool because you can do so many things with them that would completely change how the weapon works, which is again just amazing.
Yeah.
You can also
I'd say
not
that
only
makes
that, but you can change what kind of damage the weapon does too, which is insane to me. That like
Yeah.
the very properties of the weapon change, and it's all in your hand.
Really quickly, I just want to explain a quick thing. I think Liam, you mentioned like poise damage. There are a lot of different, as a guy was saying earlier, the combat is very simple at a first glance, but once you dive deep into it, it's really complex. Such as poise damage. Each enemy and character, including yourself, has poise, which essentially means how many times they get hit until they stagger. And what poise damage does is, essentially, if you can hit an enemy for all their poise, it'll stagger them, and then you can get a critical hit on them, which is really good against bosses because it gets you a lot of damage for free.
Yeah, that and against bosses too. When you get that damage, they get knocked back. So if you have a lot of damage yourself, that gives you a chance to heal. But like another thing with the Ashes of War, like Guy was mentioning with the scaling, like I was running a dexterity build, so like a lot of faster attacks. If there was a weapon that was strength based, but I still wanted to use it, there's plenty of Ashes of War that would change its affinity to dexterity. So I would still get the benefits of my build, but I could still use a weapon that I liked. So like it just adds, there's so many layers that keep getting added on to make it more and more versatile. And I think on top of that too, I think the enemies being designed the way they are, like if Elden Ring's enemies were like any other games, I don't think its combat would be as fun, because again, it is very simple. But the simple combat is fun because the enemies' attacks are so crazy and out there that having the combat be simple to some degree, I think is for the best. So you won't have to be focusing on doing like a lot of crazy combos and timing. Mostly, you have this crazy ass dude with a twin blade that's like swirling it at like 300 miles per hour. Figure out how to dodge that and hit him.
I think another thing that just adds to the gameplay is that it's the fact that if you compare Elden Ring and pretty much all the other Souls games to like other action adventure games, it's actually quite slow. Like it's actually pretty slow paced, which I think adds to it because you feel the hits and the damage that you are dealing.
Yeah, I'd say it's like Monster Hunter in that way, to where like you're not doing super big flashy attacks all the time. I mean, like don't get me wrong, you have flashy attacks, but you could still get punished for using those flashy attacks. Any like big swing you do, you're locked into that animation for good. So when you start going into it, you better have prepared for whatever you're swinging at so that it doesn't kill you. So you can't just swing willy-nilly. You have to actually play around your enemies, because the first thing you should usually do when fighting any new enemy or boss is like keep your distance, see what their attack pattern is like, and then try to go in when you see safe opportunities to attack.
Oh yeah, and not only that, but it's like you're learning the boss, but you also have to learn the weapon because all of the weapon types are so unique in movesets that like you can't just like constantly switch out weapons because you have to learn like what your active frames are. You need to learn the range of your weapons. You need to learn like what your weapon can do exactly, which I love because the game is pretty much telling you, hey, this might fit your playstyle, but you not only have to learn how this weapon works in the world, you also need to learn how bosses can react to it and punish you for misusing it.
Or you just go, I'm gonna swing because it is strong, and then if you lose, you go, I'm gonna do it again. There are different ways to play the game. You can be smart like Guy, or you can just go, I'm gonna press the funny button and Ash of War, or Magic, or Faith, or whatever you're doing, just because you can do whatever you want in this game. It is probably one of the actual like true open world games, because there's so many open world games that say they're open world and then restrict you. This one is almost no restrictions.
Yeah.
And even if you think there's a restriction, like there are certain bosses you have to beat the game, some of them aren't, you think are required, are not. Like one of the main bosses of the game, we can talk about the main bosses, right?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
I think
No, I
this
mentioned
game's,
this earlier,
10
like
years old. I think we're
Godric.
good.
Yeah,
okay.
I mentioned
I was
Godric
gonna
not
talk-
being required
Godric-
earlier.
Yeah, Godric isn't required, Renala isn't required, Radon isn't required, Belania isn't required,
Moog. Yeah.
Moog, Rickard. Like there's so many bosses where you only have to technically fight 2 of them, and you can pick and choose. And even like with Godric, the entirety of Stormvale Castle, you can just go past. It doesn't seem like you can, but you can just go past Stormvale Castle if you wanted to.
Liam,
Yes.
who's Rickard?
I think you meant Praetor Rykard.
Oh, okay.
Rykard?
I've never,
Yeah.
I've never
Giant
heard.
snake man.
The blasphemous.
Okay, I've never heard
Yeah.
his name pronounced Rickard before.
I don't think they ever say his name. So
No,
I just-
Morgoth does. He says Praetor Rykard, the
Praetor
blasphemous.
Oh. Well,
Well,
my bad, Rykard.
Rickard sounds like
there's-
someone you like meet at a supermarket and you never like you're like, oh, that's an interesting name, and then you just never think about it again. So it's like imagine Praetor Rickard of like your local supermarket being a fucking demigod who had like a snake body.
I'm just imagining like Rykard in the like milk aisle, and you're like, and like half the store is destroyed.
And that like as
Man,
the manager of like the
make
supermarket.
make fun of me for mispronouncing one name.
Yes.
Hey, that's what this
Damn.
channel does. Guy does me all the time.
Yeah,
Because I mean, that's where
Oh,
I'm now
no.
thinking of like
There's
Rykard.
been so many times where I mispronounce something, and then I still to this day I mispronounced Jason Voorhees one time in a very bad way, and I still get made fun of it to this day.
Jason
Oh my God.
Venahores.
Yes, I did call him Jason Van Horez. There is no A or N.
Oh yeah, I'm
But,
thinking of the thing Guy said with Rickard. Like, imagine you're fighting over some stupid like the last feastable bar in there, and then that motherfucker is like prepare to field our wrath of Praetor Rickard. You would lose all edge instantly.
Dude,
Right,
I would lose my edging streak. But getting back to Elden Ring, no, a really good point is that like there's so much of this game that's optional and you don't think of you don't think it is on your first playthrough, but it is. Like Liam said earlier, all of Stormville Castle is optional. There is a pathway to the right of it that you can take, completely miss out on a like pretty decently big section of the game. You do not have to do it at all, which I think is insane with the amount of versatility that you get in terms of like exploration and combat.
Oh yeah, because one really cool detail I noticed too is like there's a character that uses a false name, and when you fight them, you eventually see them again, and then they reveal their true name. The crazy thing is though, you can go to that area where they're at, fight the person in their true name. You'll go back to that beginning area where they had their false name, and they won't be there anymore because you actually killed them.
Yeah,
like
no,
it's a very big attention.
You first.
I was gonna say it's a very high attention to detail, especially for like a path that like 90% of players are never gonna go and do their first time playing around, because the majority of people are going to go to Stormvale Castle first when they like in their first playthrough.
You know what's funny about that is that there's actually 2 characters in the game that actually have that, and even when you do the boss fight for the other character, you can still encounter them at a certain location. It is.
Oh yeah, I know what you're talking about. It's a little weird.
It's weird, and I know why they did it. I guess we can say it. There's a NPC.
Probably because of trophies.
So what?
I was gonna say probably just because of trophies. You get locked out of one.
No, just say. Well, I mean, you kind of get locked out of incantations and like some items that are useful. So I mean, that's probably why they did it. But there's a NPC named Garank that you will meet throughout in the game. He's optional, by the way. You don't need to find him, but you fight when you fight him in a boss fight, he reveals his true form. You can fight and kill him, yet you can still encounter him to where his original location is. And there is no in-lore explanation for that. That it's just an oversight of Garank giving you really powerful items and spells that they didn't want to make an excuse up of, oh, okay, he's gone now, so no more spells or incantations for you. Which, well, you know what? I give them credit for doing that.
I'm gonna be real. I thought you were about to mention Moog for a second because like he has 2 different forms for some reason. But
yeah,
you are right about the Garank thing.
Yeah. Oh my God, you're right. That's insane.
Yeah.
I forgot. Why are so many bosses like that?
Well, I think a part of the thing too is a very interesting part about Elden Ring's story, and especially you as a Tarnished, is how death works in the world. Because since the Rune of Death was partially stolen and sealed away, death is very wonky in Elden Ring. Like you yourself, you are dead when the game first starts, but the grace from the Ur Tree is what revives you and gives you life. And you can keep reviving in the game because you have the grace in your eyes. But people that have lost the grace of the Ur Tree, they can't keep reviving. So that's why some other Tarnished you find in the game that are like you can fight and kill them, and they won't revive because they have long lost their grace.
Yeah, which kind of like I kind of want to lead into that now, kind of the lore of the game. I love the Elden Ring lore. I think it is some of the best lore in a video game. And
we should also preface the lore by saying the lore of Elden Ring was mainly written by George R.R. Martin, who also wrote Game of Thrones.
Yeah, so they had some
the good Game of Thrones, not the last 2 seasons that the creators of the show made themselves. He wrote the good stuff.
So true. But no, that's actually like a great topic because Elden Ring, like the other Souls games, is very cryptic with some of its storytelling. So some of the lore that is in the game, you need to look at item descriptions, and you need to look in like very subtle areas to like get context on like certain locations of enemies or like certain weapons. But what's so fun to me about Elden Ring lore is the fact that you can pretty much make so many inferences about things and it works. And one of the some of the big stuff in Elden Ring I want to talk about is like the demigods and how like they're like the main bosses of the game, but they're one big family who all have the idea of either preserving the world as it is or becoming like the new Elden Lord or taking over the world as it is. And there's
Or having sex with their younger brother.
true.
Unfortunately. Unfortunately.
I feel like we gotta put in the Moog.
Oh
wants
yes,
to-
the loathsome child molester.
So-
he wants to molest a he's one of those technically not a child but is in a child's body,
Let's just say that
so
like
it's still as equally gross.
Mikola is pretty much a 5,000-year-old dragon lolly. That's the best way to like describe him.
Yeah.
But
Though I think for Mikola, it is preferable he got that curse over Melania's curse, the curse of Rot. Because that bitch can't see no more.
true. Which I do want to talk about the lore of the bosses and of the enemies. It affects how their like placement and everything is in the game. Like, big example. Reason why you see Melania at the Halig tree is because Melania and Mikola are twins. They're brother and sister. They're very close, and Melania is there to try and protect Mikola while he's trying to revive himself and get a new body. The reason why you see Godric in Stormville Castle, that's because that's his castle. You see Morgott in Lanedell because he is canonically the king of the Golden Order at that point of the game. You don't see Godfrey until you don't see a version of a certain boss until a later portion of the game because they're gone for a certain amount of time, then they come back. They're very consistent with what their story is setting up, and they do this through excellent world building in gameplay and in just descriptions, which I love.
Dude, I swear, the thing you mentioned with Melania, like, it goes even so much further, because, like, one of the first scenes you see in the game in the intro is Melania facing off with Radahn, who, like, they were both the strongest of their time. Melania was undefeated, and Radahn was known as, like, one of the strongest demigods, if not the strongest. But they basically both brought themselves to a stalemate, but they both left with, like, grave injuries, and they were never the same. So you kind of question, like, that happened in Caelid, almost opposite to the map of where the Halig tree is that Melania rests at. The cool thing is, there's actually an explanation for that in the lore. One of her Clean Rot Knights, after she was put in a coma with her fight from Radahn, he actually carried her all the way to the Halig tree to ensure her safety. And that's where she ended up resting to also eventually await her brother's return. Like, they really put some thought into the lore.
There is no stone unturned with the lore. Even the trailers themselves have lore that aren't in the games. Like the fight between Radahn and Melania, you only get to like see that through the trailer. You can still they still allude to it, but the fight is only in the trailer. And even with Shadow of the Erdtree, they have cutscenes that I doubt are going to be in the actual game for the story trailer.
You know what's really
Oh yeah,
funny?
definitely.
The shattering of the Elden Ring, you know, the thing that kicks off the plot, there's no cutscene of it in the game. It is only in the story trailer.
I mean, technically it's in the intro, but it's a still image. But I mean, the entire intro is still images, so...
Yeah, so that's what's really funny. It's like, like Liam said, there's just lore in the story trailers that's not in the game, but it's okay. But it's really cool too that like From Software actually like developed those CG cutscenes just for trailers and nothing else, which I think is sick as fuck.
Yeah.
I
do think it's crazy too that like that intro that we mentioned, it like tells you basically the whole story up to that point of Elden Ring. You don't understand it at the time when you're first playing the game because a lot of it sounds like gibberish. But as you play through the game, you'll have more and more of an understanding of it, and then you'll genuinely become invested in it, and then you'll be like, oh my god, that makes so much sense now. Because if you go back to rewatch the intro, like, you'll notice things.
Yeah,
I think that's also the game being a... Yeah, you first, Connor, you first.
I was gonna say, while we're on the lore, I sort of wanted to go over my favorite piece of the lore, and that's sort of the entire like thing behind the Radon Festival. Radon's probably my favorite fight in the game. I think it's a really fun fight, and honestly, probably one of the best moments of the game. And I really like the sort of lore behind it. I think you explained it to me once, Guy, that due to Radon's fight with Melania, he's sort of just had Scarlet Rot killing him slowly. And so the Radon Festival is essentially just a way for him to go out in a blaze of glory, but you're basically just putting him down like a dog.
Yeah,
I
which
think
I
that's
think is awesome.
yeah. I was
Yeah.
gonna say that's how you explained it to me once.
It's
I
reflected in the
like how
gameplay too, because he doesn't fight with like any real order or like restraint. It's just kind of like wild slashes, which I think it's so consistent.
a lot of the bosses in the game are like flawed creatures who you kind of some of them you kind of feel pity for, like beating Melania, like although at the point when you beat Melania it's relief, but like you realize afterwards she doesn't even like know who you are or what you're doing there. She just wants to defend her brother who will never return. She still thinks that Mikola's gonna come back. She doesn't know what happened to him and she never will.
Yeah.
And so it's like the lore is so cool, like with the boss fights, because like Radon, like Melania, even like Renala had like they all have like a backstory to why they're like antagonistic to you and what they want. And you're just a dude that just was like, I'm gonna become Elden Lord, and they're just like Radon, you like a guy said, you have to put him down. He is just beyond help. He's a genuinely good guy, but he's gone insane from the Scarlet Rot.
Okay, saying the demigods are good is kind of a stretch. I'm gonna be real, all of them are kind of evil, except for maybe Mikola and Morgoth.
Well, even
Actually, Morgoth's
Mikola, there's
still.
like a lot of stuff and like item descriptions and whatnot that like kind of hint towards like maybe he's not the best. Which I mean, we'll probably find out more about him in the DLC because it's very hinted at that he's gonna appear there. But like, there's a lot of item descriptions too that like he's seen as very good, but there's also like maybe a dark side to him.
Dude, are you telling me he's actually Griffith?
Dude, I'm actually thinking he's Griffith because like one of the main items I'm talking about is like the bewitching branch. It describes like how Mikola knew how to charm people and to get them to do what he wanted by like bewitching them in a way. So like that's literally Griffith.
Yeah.
Oh my
and
god.
Which for those of you who don't know, this is one of the times I'll make an exception to mention it. Uh, the main creator of the game, Miyazaki, he is a very, very huge fan of the popular manga Berserk. Because that manga, you will see its influences all throughout the games. Like a lot of the bosses look like they were straight up ripped out of Berserk or are heavily based on it. And then a lot of the characters too, some of them will have similar names or they'll fit like what that character was.
Yeah, he's not subtle about it either. He has said in interviews that Berserk is his favorite manga, and he has just like said outright like he will continue to make references of it because he loves the world building and the creature design of Berserk so much, which I'm all for because I think Berserk has some of the best like character and creature designs ever, and I love that like my favorite manga as well is also being represented in one of my favorite series. But that just also kind of is reflected with the lore as well, because you'll see like some characters like in their moveset and in their lore that are often very similar to some characters in Berserk, and you can see that influence if like you've read the manga and have played the game. You know what I mean? Yeah, I just think it's a really cool thing to like connect points with.
Oh yeah, definitely. I was very hyped when I was fighting the fire giant, and then his second phase started, and I saw he was referenced to the apostle monkey.
Oh, Wild
And,
from
and
that one chapter. Yes,
yeah,
yes.
and Golden Age.
That goes for all the Souls games, because if you look throughout the Souls series, you will see like Berserk influences everywhere. There are enemies in the game in like Dark Souls 1 that has armor that looks pretty identical to what Guts would wear in some of the early chapters. You have a great sword in that is in every single Souls game that is very, very, very similar to Guts's iconic sword, the Dragon Slayer. And there's just like there's pieces of like media everywhere in the Soul series that's just it's so cool that like it's a culmination of so many different things. It's a culmination of just medieval dark ages, a lot of in Bloodborne especially, a lot of cosmic horror. Like there's HP Lovecraft is actually probably the second biggest influence in the Soul series.
Honestly, I can see where that is because like they got some creepy ass enemies. I ain't gonna lie.
I'm gonna be real, like if you really think about it, like Elden Ring actually falls into the category of cosmic horror.
I'd say Rykard, or by Liam saying Rickard, is a good example of that because like
I was gonna
he-
say, a great example would be Estelle. I think Estelle.
Ooh,
yeah,
yeah,
that's a good one.
Stell's a good
That's a
one.
good one. I would just say like all of the outer gods that are like mentioned in the game, like they're in the lore of Elden Ring, there are multiple gods that take dominion in outside of our realms, and they have to use vassals and other beings to communicate here. Some examples being the Elven Beast and the Two Fingers, but we never see a single outer god. We just know of their existence, which I think is really like it's really cool, like eldritch horror shit.
Yeah,
That's
I mean, like Melania herself, her main powers comes from like her being a vassal of like the goddess of rot, to like where she's cursed, and like her curse, it melts through like basically literally everything. Like the scarlet rot affects more than just life. Like it even affects like crystallarian enemies and whatnot. Like even they can be afflicted by it. And then the immortal demigods as well. Like we mentioned, Radon, even they can be hurt and killed by the scarlet rot that outer god in particular brings.
which is so cool in the lore because like they really I don't know how they design the games, whether they do lore first or gameplay first. I mean, okay, honestly they don't really need to do gameplay first because they already have like a basis of what to do because they've been doing it for the past like 15 years. But it's crazy to me to think that like they're so consistent with their lore and their gameplay as well that it's kind of scary. You know what I mean? Because how much thought was put into this video game to make sure that like everything the item descriptions say line up with what you're seeing and what you're experiencing?
Dude, they probably had a team of like 50 people that was solely dedicated to just like double checking to make sure the lore checked out. Like I ain't gonna lie.
They probably did have that. There's no telling. I know Miyazaki and George R. R. Martin worked very close on writing the game, so they probably went back and forth and making sure that everything was okay. So that's
Yeah.
probably where it came from. But
I mean,
Um,
I mean, definitely for a game that's not like main focus is story. Like I was surprised how invested I got into the story.
Well, the thing with Souls games is that they are also, or with FromSoft, is they also take their time with their games. Sekiro came out in 2019, and 3 years later we got Elden Ring. But that does not mean Elden Ring came out like they started working. They were probably working on this game for so many years.
I think
Probably before, probably
Um,
like
you
maybe
first.
around, maybe like I actually want to know now when they started working on Elden Ring.
I can answer that. There was I think this was a leak. But essentially this leak had said that the development of Shadow of the Erdtree and Elden Ring started nearing the completion of Dark Souls 3, which came out
The
in
game's
2016.
development began in 2017 alongside the popular Sekiro.
Yeah, that's after Dark Souls. That's immediately after Dark Souls 3, so that makes sense. That checks out.
Yeah. So they worked on that game for 5 years straight.
And it's so good.
That's as much time as it took to get Tears of the Kingdom from Breath of the Wild.
I think that's just like a testament to how like dedicated FromSoft is as developers, and why there's so much like commerce and so much discourse around their games, because they're consistent. They are very good at making video games, and people know that. Hence why people are so excited for anything that they release or anything they announce. Hell, Shadow of the Erdtree is their most expensive DLC. I've seen almost no discourse or criticism go towards that though, because they know it's going to be good.
Yeah, like having that much confidence from your audience is a very good thing because like people trust FromSoft because they've just been that consistent and they've always like treated us as consumers very good with the games. Like again, I am happy that now I am fully able to support them directly
There's no
instead of like
additional
having
DLC with
bought
this
my
game.
pre-owned. Oh yeah.
Like the only DLC content that is in this game is just an expansion that will give you more of what you already love.
Yeah,
And that's just like, God, I love this game a lot because it doesn't force you to have to buy any currency. There's no cosmetics that you need to buy. Everything that you want in this game, go and find it yourself. It is in this. You just have to find in the right place. There is no paywall to get you to a certain location. All the game asks you is just sit down, play it, explore, and enjoy it. And that is what a video game should strive to do.
yeah, it's really like
But
Oh
yeah, I
yeah.
mean, that's just
I was
you
just
first.
gonna say, now that we've sort of discussed the lore of the game, I think we should maybe like actually talk about the bosses and how different their designs and stuff are.
I am gonna say this about the bosses. If I'm gonna summarize my thoughts about them, I think they are some of the best, but also some of the worst bosses in the Soul series. Like comparing like all like the Dark Souls trilogy, Bloodborne, and Sekiro. I think and Demon Souls. I think they have some of the best, but also some of the worst. They have really good bosses like Godric and Morgott and Radagon and Godfrey, but for every one of those, they have bosses like the Godskin Duo and, in my opinion, the Fire Giant
Yeah,
or parts of Melania.
yeah.
Hey, Fire Giant was still kind of cool. He wasn't perfect, but he was cool.
Disagree.
But
Liam, back me up.
getting okay, no, we're not
No,
doing
no, no.
this.
Fire Giant is cool. That's all I'm gonna say. I enjoyed the Fire Giant. If you didn't
I cannot
enjoy
hear
Fire
you, Liam.
Giant, that's completely.
I
fair.
cannot hear
That
you,
is-
Liam.
Oh, my bad. Fire Giant is fun, and if you don't agree with me, that's completely fair. This game is, I think, one thing I can say about this game is they have a lot of bosses. So of course, some bosses are going to be fun for some people, and some are not going to be fun for others. I hate every single double boss in that game, though. That is the one consistent thing I hate.
Double bosses are very cringe, and it really sucks that there's a decent amount of them in this game. Like
There's like a yeah,
you've got
it's kind of a problem.
you've got
Like in
Godskin
the
Duo.
open world, you first.
I was gonna say you've got Godskin Duo. You've got the double burial watchdog things. You've got the Valiant Gargoyles. You've got I think there's I don't know. It's like a what those like a Iron Maiden enemies that sort of grab you. You've got a double fight of
Oh,
those.
the virgins, the Iron Virgins, yeah.
You've
I
got
mean, those aren't bosses, but they are very strong enemies.
there's a boss fight with two of them.
Oh, okay. I guess just never encountered that.
You've got the double Crucible Knights.
The double tree sentinels.
The double Crucible.
Oh God, that
The
fight.
loathsome tree sentinels.
I double Crucible Knights is the bane of my existence. Like actually, I think for everyone they have a different boss where they're like, I don't want to play the game anymore after that. That was mine. It was the Crucible Knights. I genuinely was just not having fun.
I think with the game, like I understand their philosophy of, okay, this is an open world. We have a lot of opportunities to make boss fights, which I adore. There are 165 boss fights in the base game of Elden Ring for you to find and explore. That's including main bosses. This has its benefits and it has its drawbacks. One of the drawbacks of this is that in their design decisions, they decided to make a variant of each like mini boss or just boss and say, okay, we can make a duo fight for them to because we have this big world and we can make each fight unique by doing this, this, and this. How about we make one of these fights unique by putting a double fight here? It doesn't really work the way they would intend though, because some of the double fights in past games were designed around that. You put enemies that were not designed around double fights into a double fight, and you just it doesn't create a good combo.
No, it doesn't.
Yeah, I will say though, like For me, that would be a minor complaint though, because like even for those bosses, like some of them being a bit rough, like Elden Ring still has some of the best bosses I've ever faced. Like Radon is such a cool fucking boss. Like the fight itself and the lore, Radon goes so crazy because that man crashes into you like he's a fucking meteor.
Yeah,
Oh
exactly.
yeah, for
Like some of
Space
the
Two transition,
bosses,
yeah.
some of the bosses in Elden Ring, like did you fight at like the midpoint of the game or even before that, would be like final bosses in other games. Like they were that good.
Yeah, like if we want to talk about like cool face transitions, I think Godric is also really up there. Like he literally like cuts his own hand off to graft a giant dragon head onto him. Like that's so
That's
cool.
so cool.
Oh, we haven't even talked. The dialogue in that game, specifically with the bosses, is like hands down one of like the best one-liners you'll ever hear. My favorite line in a video game ever is Malekith going, "Oh death, become my blade once more," and then pulling out a sword out of his hand and like transforming it so raw.
It really is. I think
One,
Malenia also
yeah.
has a very raw transition between phases.
Who does?
Malenia.
Oh, she has one of the best in my opinion. Like, obviously it's a trick. It's it's tricking you into thinking, oh, you beat the boss, but oh wait, here's the second phase. But what I love about that phase transition is that it's consistent with the lore of she, when in dire need, she will bloom and be afflicted more with scarlet rot, but increase more in power. Guess what? She got defeated, so she bloomed again so that she can gain more power, and then her second phase is that response to that. And the phase transition in response to that is so sick.
Yeah.
I really love her design with that butterfly wings. And when I say butterfly wings, I literally mean like angel wings made of like butterflies. It looks really cool.
Oh yeah, there are butterflies that are like flying off it and everything. It's so sick. I like that
Speaking of
design because she's naked.
guys, let's kill him with hammers.
It's fine. If he tries to touch the scarlet rot titties, his hands will fall off. So
Ooh. Speaking of
I may,
Melania,
I
the
may
reason
get
why,
AIDS version 2, but that's okay. It's worth.
speaking of Melania, we keep bringing her up a lot is because she is considered like probably one of the hardest bosses in the Souls games, and rightfully so, because she's very difficult. I mean, at least I think for Guy, because I'm pretty sure the other three of us beat her in like what 3 or 4 tries.
yeah, I mean, me and Liam 4 tries, you 3 tries.
Yeah,
I don't know. Maybe we're just better than Guy at Elden
yeah.
Ring.
I
No,
honestly
no,
think
guy just goes wham wham, no bleed build, wham wham, and then
Okay.
no one here used a bleed build against Melania.
yeah.
No.
I mean,
No, literally, like half the people in here used to bleed build against Melania. No,
I didn't.
you did.
Guy.
Yeah, no, I'm sorry, Liam. I
Nice.
did use the bleed build.
I also made you
I
use the bleed build with the exact
Okay,
same
so
weapon. Brew
I'm
used.
just different. I'm just different.
I'm still I
But,
beat her.
Different in that you're a liar.
I mean, to be fair,
Dude,
I did beat her second phase on my first try. Like I got to her second phase and beat her. First try, so.
I'm getting so heated because no one here believes that I only used the bleed build at the very end of the game, and it makes me upset.
Liam, I believe you. I believe you. The other two don't.
You know what? It's fine that Guy doesn't believe me, but Brewer, it honestly hurts that you don't.
I don't know, man. Bleed kind of go wacky.
Bleed's fun.
That's
It
actually
is-
kind of
it
the
is-
thing I
it
want
is
to talk
wacky.
about is some of the flaws with some of the stats and whatnot. The main thing I want to talk about. Oh my lord, there are so many bosses in this game that get cheesed by like 2 things, being the spirit summons and some status effects. I like summons. I think they're a cool way for people to like approach the game, and if you're having like a difficult time with a boss or an enemy, just throw it out and have it help you. I do think they are a little too overpowered though.
Me and
Mimic tier go burr.
me and my mimic tier run deep, bro. Listen,
Yeah, that's
I could-
my main one.
I can understand why people don't like Mimic Tier, but I love Personally, I love Mimic Tier. He's my homie. And
I love the Mimic Tier. Like, the concept of Mimic Tier and, like, what it does is just sick as fuck. I
it
love the
really,
Mimic Tier.
yeah, and I don't care if I used it in my playthrough to beat most of the bosses because I only used it at the end, and it was my first playthrough. So
I mean, at first playthrough, you get a pass on anything, especially like if you didn't look it up and you just happened upon it. Fair game.
no, yeah,
Like, did I happen to get like 2 really good bleed weapons? Yes, but did I like happen to just find a bloodhound, kill it, and then also use Morgoth's Remembrance to get his cool sword?
yeah.
And they just happen to both do bleed? Yes. So it's fair game for me.
I might have
Yeah,
used
and
more
that's fine.
I
I'm
used
a,
more
yeah, like,
Guts
it's
Curse
perfectly
Sword.
fine.
Yeah, I
I
used
just,
more Curse Sword because it looked cool. You use more Guts Curse Sword because it does a lot of bleed damage. We are not the same.
Hey, that wasn't because of bleed damage. It's because it's a good dexterity weapon. I was running a dex build.
Yeah, I'm not talking about you, bro. I'm just talking about the people in general.
Yeah,
but,
I will say for Elden Ring, there's a lot of stigma about ways people play the game, and honestly, I'm not a fan. There's a lot of elitists out there who go, summons is cheap, this is cheap, this is cheap, you have to play it, no summons, no this, no this. It's a single player game, people can play it how they want. If you don't play it, good for you. It's like someone beating a Nuzlocke and then making fun of someone for beating the game normally in Pokemon. It's just arbitrary rules that people make to maybe have more fun themselves or impose a challenge. There's no right or wrong way to play the game, and I think that's a very important thing that needs to be said about Elden Ring, is that you can play it however you want and have fun, and you shouldn't be judged for playing it a certain way.
Oh my god,
no, I completely
you're
agree.
cooking with that point, Liam, because that is so true. Because like the summons, like I'm not gonna lie, yeah, Mimic Tier is busted, and then the summons do definitely make bosses a hell of a lot easier. But that is something they programmed into the game. I didn't put a mod in there to like for an easy mode. It's a main mechanic of the game. They thought it out. They balanced it to some degree. Some stuff is not very balanced, like Mimic Tier, but it's still a main mechanic in the game that they recommend that you use. But if you do want to challenge yourself more, you don't have to use it. But that's the great thing. Like Liam said, you can play the game how you want. Like for my first playthrough, I was fine with using summons because it's Elden Ring. It's notoriously difficult, so I was going to use the mechanics they put in to beat it for at least for a first playthrough.
Anytime I see an elitist post about Elden Ring, it always just comes off to me like, if you don't beat Elden Ring while using a broken limb of some random homeless man you found in the city of California while wearing your underpants and having your grandmother's hospital gown on, then you didn't beat the game properly. That's always what it sounds like to me.
Yeah, no, and the thing is, I think a lot of people forget too that, like, the game was designed with summons in mind. People forget that a lot. I think the main thing as to why people, like, they feel so proud about, like, defeating bosses in this game is because, like, a lot of them are very hard, don't get me wrong, but also just they're also scaled up because, like, they know that people are going to be playing with summons in mind. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I think a lot of people think like they default to the sort of thing that most developers will do nowadays, like live service games. Well, they're add like a really broken weapon. They think it's like I think they default to thinking it like that, where they just added it without thinking about any of the balance and stuff like that. Which for most games like Fortnite, Call of Duty, other live service games like that usually does happen. But Elden Ring was developed for 5 years. They knew what they were doing when they added summons, and if something did become like egregiously broken, like Rivers of Blood, they nerfed it and they fixed that in the patch.
Yeah, of course. And, like, again,
Something
it's a
cool
PvE game. But what were you gonna say, Liam?
I was gonna say this is a very cool thing because Elden Ring was one of the first games to make balance changes for like a FromSoft game specifically. Balance changes where they actually changed some bosses, some weapons, that kind of thing, and not just for PvP. Even though some people say that things should only have been changed for PvP, they changed things for PvE. They made Radon easier, harder, everything in between. They made certain enemies drop less runes because, like, there of course it's a video game. There are going to be exploits, but what they did is that they took weapons that weren't as good and made them better. They took weapons that were, like, I wouldn't say like broken in the sense where it took a lot. It took some of the interesting things out of the game because of how stupid it was, like Rivers of Blood, like the Moonveil Katana, because at some points those were the, like, bar none best weapons in the game, and if you in like it just made the game super easy.
Yeah, and also, like, it was a good way for them to look over oversights, which I don't know if any of y'all know this, but on the initial version of Elden Ring, weapons with arcane scaling did not scale with arcane. They fixed this later, actually. There was a glitch where if there was a weapon with arcane scaling, it would not properly scale that damage correctly, and they didn't change that until like an update, like I would say 2 weeks after the game came out.
Oh, that's
But like,
crazy.
yeah, so like Rivers of Blood was actually like not that good at first, if you think about it, because it didn't have that initial arcane scaling. But they took the chance of patching and they were able to fix that, thank God, because about like a fifth of the weapons were just not working right.
Yeah. I mean, I will say for like Elden Ring is probably one of the biggest games I've ever played. Like we were mentioning before, like getting teleported to another side of the map. Whenever you think you know how big this game is, it's gonna throw another like 20 gigantic areas at you, tell you to explore, and you're gonna be like, "Oh damn, this game's even bigger than I thought." So like for a game of this scale, you just gotta expect to be some glitches there, especially day one.
Yeah.
Like as long as there
There
isn't
was
anything game breaking that like corrupts a save or something or breaks your system, I think it's fine
Yeah.
to some
there is a
degree.
thing that does that. There is a thing that does that.
Well, I take
um
back everything I said, and I'm gonna kill myself.
there's a y'all know about Fia, right?
Yeah.
Yes, I
Y-
do know
The
about Fia.
loathsome necrophiliac.
Yes. Uh all of the NPCs in the game all have their own like stats and values, including their own equipment that they are wearing. So, by the game's design, they are wearing equipment. This includes Fia. She has a piece of armor that is solely meant for her and no one else. You cannot obtain it in normal ways. And if you ever receive this piece of armor from like an online player, get rid of it immediately and block that person, whoever joined you in online. It is Fia's panties.
It's very funny that the
I'm
most dangerous item in the game is the necrophiliac's panties.
Elden Ring punishes you for going panty hunting. I'm not even kidding.
Yeah, I mean, in all fairness, though, to the devs, like, that's more so because like people hacked into the game. People were never meant to get that, and like, was it even possible to like glitch your way into obtaining that normally, like through an easy
No,
glitch? Yeah,
no,
because I
actually,
mean,
it's all hacks.
yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong, it was still bad that people were getting banned just because like they were given an item that they didn't know you were supposed to get. But I'd say that's more so blame to like fucking trolls who like hacked the item into the game and were giving it out to people knowing it would get them banned.
Yeah, but
Or
I just
be like me and don't play online because you don't feel like paying for PlayStation's overpriced online.
that kind of goes into some of the flaws I was wanting to talk about with this game. I think the PvP of this game is not the greatest. I like that's kind of consistent with all the Souls games though, but like my main issue with Elden Ring is that you can get so overpowered in this game compared to the other Souls games that online boils down to get hit once you're dead. And that's just not engaging to me. Not only that, but there's just like a lot of latency and online problems that like never really got fixed, which I it doesn't make me want to play online like at all because of that.
I think one thing that can be said for Elden Ring, and probably every FromSoft game, they added multiplayer, but besides like the messages and like seeing like the blood pools or whatever they're called, it's not very good. And I think that it's a very outdated and clunky way of doing online. And like people loved Elden Ring so much that they made a mod called Seamless Co-op, which is amazing, by the way, where you can play the entire game with other people. Because the way it works in co-op, at least if you want to play with someone else, they will join you for a boss fight, and then if you lose, you have to resummon them for the boss fight, do all that again, and then fight them again. Or you can, or you win and they also disappear. And it's just like it's a sad thing because they could definitely, I feel like they should either stick to multiplayer and make it better in a way where people aren't frustrated because they died or lost, but with the mechanics of the game, because they're outdated and I don't think they're well designed. Even if I get what they're trying to go for, with 2 people it's gonna be easier, but I don't think they implemented it very well. Except when
it was definitely like, I think, a second thought, because like the main focus is the single player game, like the playthrough. That's what you're going into Elden Ring for. Anyone who says they're going into Elden Ring for PvP, they are liars, because like that's not where the money's at.
Oh, exactly. And I think something to consider with Elden Ring is how much of the online is a byproduct of it being built off Dark Souls 3's engine. Like, this game was literally built off Dark Souls 3, similar to how Persona 4 was built off Persona 3. A good example, the Erdtree snake bosses that y'all know what I'm talking about. They're like they're near some trees. You can find a good amount of them in the Ashen Capital.
Yeah, those things are annoying.
Those things were actually originally in Dark Souls 3, but they were cut content, but still in the files of the game, but they were just used in Elden Ring.
You know, funnily enough, I remember people like having some arguments about the lore, because they did use, like, I think a couple assets from Bloodborne for like some just like some basic general areas for models, and like 2 things. I can't remember what exactly it was, but people were like, I was like, okay, did they put that there on purpose for the lore of the world, or was it just there because it was from Bloodborne?
Please be there because of Bloodborne. Please be there because of Bloodborne.
But we can only wish.
Hey,
but no, that's actually like a good topic starter. Is that hold up, not really a topic starter. Sorry, I was trying to continue a point I was about to say. I'm wondering if that's just a byproduct of Dark Souls 3, because the online model they have for Elden Ring, I would say works for Dark Souls 3, because that game is much more linear, and you have to do, like, if there's a boss in the way, most of the time you have to beat it before you progress. So, like, in a sense, it works for that game, but not really for Elden Ring, because of its open world nature.
yeah.
But,
I'd say just a minor gripe though for a fantastic game.
Oh, for sure. Which, I mean, God, if we're really gonna, like, I want to look at the game just from, like, the wide scope and the lens that, like, we see it as, because, oh boy, this game has left an impact on gaming that I don't think we're going to ever really come back from. I think Elden Ring has changed the shape of video games and has upped the standards of, like, what a video game should be. There is just a lot of reasons as to why this game won Game of the Year and got as much glazing as it did, because it is just fun to play, accessible to everyone, and it's just a challenge that everyone can play and beat, and just have a fun time. And I don't think, like, we're starting to see the effects of this now, if you really think about it. We have a bunch of Souls-likes coming out now, especially in the year 2024. You can't watch a single showcase of, like, a gaming showcase without, like, a Souls-like being put on there. And I think, like, Elden Ring is a big cause of that.
Yeah, it's a humongous game too with its impact, because one thing I really want to note that's very funny, its DLC is releasing on the 21st. There have been some games that were releasing around the same time or on the same date that have now moved said dates because of Elden Ring. Or some developers that have literally said, all right, guys, we moved our game to a different week so you can focus on the Elden Ring DLC, because we all know you want to play it.
They know the fucking competition, and they're not winning that shit. They are not.
I mean, that's a smart play.
It reminds me of I think SMT5 Vengeance, the sort of like remake, like add-on. I don't know what it
expanded
exactly.
re-release of
Yeah,
SMT5.
expanded release of SMT5. got announced, and I think it was literally on the same day as the Erdtree DLC dropped. So they pushed it back a week because they just knew like there's no way we'd have that good of a sales drop if we released it the same day as the Erdtree DLC drops.
Wait, no, I
Yeah,
think
no,
they
they knew the
released it. They're
competition.
releasing it ahead of the Shadow of the Erdtree.
They're releasing it before, actually. It's a week before.
Okay, I thought it
Yeah.
later.
But no, that's just like that's crazy to think that like developers are having to re-release and completely change how their games are releasing because of Elden Ring and how big it is. Like, oh my, like what other game can you really say that for? Like, what off the top of your mind can you think of a game developer changing the date because of a game this big?
Tears of the Kingdom.
What had to change? Like what release?
No, I don't remember like any specific ones, but I mean like a game so massive they would change the date for it. Like I can imagine if Tears of the Kingdom was released at around the right time where some other games were releasing, they would have moved their dates.
Yeah, they probably
Yeah.
would have. And that's just like a bare bones look at how like massive this game's impact is, because I do want to like talk about this a little bit. I think this is going to be like FromSoft's new, I want to say drawing board game of like how they're going to approach video games from here, which like they've been making video games of the Souls like genre for a long time. I mean, fuck, they kind of created it. But I think they're gonna like take the model of this, because we haven't seen a game from them of this caliber in terms of impact since fucking Dark Souls 1 back in 2011. Like
That's
that's
crazy.
insane to think about.
So much time has passed.
Truly.
But it's like this game is so big that it draws in so many people that I feel like they're just gonna make their games like based off this from now. Like maybe that might be an Elden Ring 2, or we just might see like another like Souls like game from them that will include very similar mechanics, or maybe even another open world. But like by and all, this game is just fucking fantastic. It's one of my favorites.
Yeah.
I think it's a pretty safe assumption to say that they, even after Shadow of the Erdtree, will not be done with this IP, because there is so much they can do with this IP and its lore and all of that that could make many good games. I don't know if it will be another Dark Souls 1, 2, and 3, because they are a game studio that wants to push themselves to do new things and not just, copy same formula over and over again, even if it doesn't always breed success. DS2.
True.
But I think no matter what, like Elden Ring is going to go down in history as one of the best games ever made.
Yeah.
And it's an impressive fact that like we live in a time where a game of this caliber can like literally change almost every aspect, like aspects of life, even outside of video games.
Yeah. Something before we get to like maybe like our concluding points or something I wanted to just quickly say is that I think other game devs should sort of learn from like if to learn anything is the gigabyte size for Elden Ring, because the game is absolutely massive and full with content, and I'm pretty sure it's only like 40 gigabytes, which
That's
is
insane.
especially when you've got like games like COD, Spider-Man 2, Mortal Kombat 1 that are like upwards of like 300, 250 gigabytes, and they don't have anywhere near the amount of content that Elden Ring does.
Call of Duty games try to optimize their storage size challenge. Impossible.
Exactly. Like every time I remember that Elden Ring is only 40 gigabytes, it literally just blows my mind, because that game is truly insane in like size.
I think that's just a testament. Yeah, with the size, man. I think that's just a testament to how much like detail and just how much work they put into the game to make sure it is the best it can be.
Yeah, I mean, the game took like forever to come out, but like I am so glad it did, because Like, they let that thing cook in the oven for damn good reason. Because it is a masterpiece on all ends.
Yeah.
And now we're about to get a massive DLC to coincide it.
I think now we can move on to our concluding points, right?
I think so.
Oh,
man.
yeah.
Um,
Who wants to go first?
I'll go first because I feel like I have the least to say on the game, at least compared to the rest of you guys. To conclude with me, I really like Elden Ring. It was my first Souls game, like true Souls game I ever played. I really like the world, the lore, everything. I don't know if I'll ever play it again. Like hell, I'm not even getting the DLC on drop day for multiple reasons, but I
Shame!
Boo! Sorry, involuntary reaction.
It's fine.
Ugh,
But
gross. Sorry.
it's fine. But
Not.
I truly do love this game. I think it is deserving of a 10 out of 10. I do think that guy constantly cooming over it is deserved. Unlike certain other things he cooms over, but I do really enjoy this game. And I think it's great, but I'll pass it on to someone else.
Awesome, man. That's awesome. Someone else want to go?
You down for it, Liam?
I can go next. I feel like I already gave like a closing statement, but I will just say this. This game is one of my favorite games of all time, top 5 probably of all time, and I've played a good amount of games, so that's not like a light thing to say. And I beat the game very quickly because I didn't want to put the game down every single time I played it. I just wanted to keep playing it. The sense of triumph you get after beating the final boss of that game is unmatched. And I don't think I will ever experience elation like that from beating a video game, because it is a journey, and the reward for beating Elden Ring goes past beating a video game. It's a genuine sense of triumph.
Oh man, great statement. I think I'll go second to last, since I know Guy probably has the most to say out of any of us because he's played all the Souls games. I'm just going to say it outright. I've said it before, Elden Ring is a goddamn masterpiece on all ends. I will note it has a couple flaws that, like, they're just very minor, so you may not even really notice them. And most of the flaws I have relate to just, like, stuff in the game being so great. Like, one of them is that with the weapons, like, if you want to respec to use a weapon, because all weapons have required stats, if you want to respec your stats, that, and if you want to, let's see, what's the best way to put it? If you want to upgrade your weapons all the way, the resources for that can be a little stingy at times. Like, there are bell bearings and whatnot to get, but I just kind of wish that the game was more open with how they let you swap between weapons. And the only reason I'm saying that is because of how fun each weapon is to use. Like, I would love if, like, respecing and, like, or just upgrading weapons had, like, easier paths or was a bit more balanced out, because I just love how all the weapons function. And there was some weapons I really wanted to try to use, but I didn't because it would have taken a lot of time investment too. That, and some of the balancing in the game for resistances, like, also not really favoring, like, the experimentalism that I would have loved to see a bit more, because you have so many weapons to experiment with, but some of them are just not very good because, like, a lot of enemies in the game, like, resist holy damage, so, like, holy builds are, like, always up against the wall basically. But besides those, like, minor complaints I just listed, there is so much to love with the game. The soundtrack is fantastic. It had me hyped up for all the boss fights. Even when I was getting my ass beat into the ground, like, I was still hyped to fight, and I got motivated to keep trying again, even if the boss was really tough. The combat is fantastic. There's a great rhythm to it. There's great weight with all of your hits, and you feel a real sense of satisfaction taking down these grand foes while you're literally just some dude. The world is, like, so massive. There's so much to explore that, like I said before, whenever you think you've seen all the game, they're going to throw out 3 more areas, and they're just going to keep surprising you. It's like, Elden Ring is damn near impossible to spoil because of how big it is. It would take you forever to spoil everything in the game to someone. So yeah, for me, it's a masterpiece, and I would very highly recommend you play it, because there's not a lot on the market like it. There's not a lot of games that are being made the same way Elden Ring was made, and a lot of games that can really stand up to its caliber.
Well put, man. Well put. Oh God, where do I even begin with Elden Ring? I don't think this is a very controversial statement to say that I am definitely the biggest Souls fan in this podcast right now.
Really? The guy who's played every single one of them?
Yeah, I might be a Souls fan.
I would have never guessed.
But yeah, I would go as far as to say that the Souls series from Software is my favorite series in all video games. I don't think I have seen a video game series match this consistency worth of quality. And I've played a fuck ton of games, and I've not seen a single series do it as well as FromSoft. And what I have to say on Elden Ring, I had very high expectations for this game going into it when I first played it. All my expectations were not only met, but they were exceeded. I love this game to death. It is probably my 7th or 8th favorite game of all time. Only getting trumped by like a few games like Bloodborne, Minecraft, Persona 5, just other games. But it's a testament, in my opinion, to how good this game is. I have over 300 hours in this game. It's one of my most played games, because I just love going back into the lands between each time, discovering a weapon that I've never used before, trying a build out I've never tried before, fighting a boss I've never seen before. There's so much that you think you've seen it all, you haven't. This game has so many nooks and crannies that, frankly, I don't even think we've discovered everything there is in the game. I think there's still shit out there that we have to discover, and I think that's just beautiful in how massive of a game this is. We are about to receive its DLC, and I cannot tell y'all how excited I am. This is going to be their biggest DLC yet. We've had a lot of coverage on it, and not only that, but it's making one of my favorite games even bigger and better, which I cannot thank enough for FromSoft for just giving us the opportunity to experience more of what's within the lands between. Now, as Brewer said, this game has some flaws. Some of the stuff that he hasn't mentioned that I do want to talk about, I think this game kind of is a step back in terms of the quality of bosses. I think that, like Brewer said, some of the resistances are out of whack, especially for holy damage. I think that they have very weird movesets for what they're trying to accomplish. And what I mean by this is that there are moves in the boss's movesets designed to make it artificially harder. The most obvious example of this is Melania's Waterfowl Dance. That is a cheap fucking move. Y'all, I know everyone in here can say that move is fucking ass.
Yep.
But the thing is, like, other examples include Margit, probably the first boss people will fight. He has a 3-hit combo where you're intentionally supposed to roll through the first 2 hits in a single roll, but his 3rd hit comes out so quickly and tracks so consistently that it'll always catch you on the end lag of the roll, making it practically impossible to dodge. You have to run away from it and not dodge, which goes against like the design of the game. And then you have Godric, who has a tornado attack that is impossible to react to because of how like slow the game is by design. It's meant to just get you off Godric so that the boss fight can last longer. But besides some of those like little gripes that I have, I think this is one of the best games I've ever played. I think there is so much to go back to with this game. I look forward to playing it every single time I load it up. And the fact of the matter is, it's just going to get better. There's so much to experience left, and there's just so much to try out. Like, people always like question why I play this game so much. It's because it's fun every time I play it. But yeah, this is one of the games of all time, guys. And with that being said, if you like this kind of content and want more from it, smash that subscribe button, like how you're smashing your L2 button to defeat those bosses, because that's the fucking meta. And make sure to hit that like button.
And I think maybe subscribe to our channel if you want to see more content, and then comment about what type of Elden Lord you are, like maybe your experience with the game, what build you ran, and maybe what boss kicked your ass a lot. Like for me personally, Draconic Tree Sentinel probably gave me the most deaths in the game out of any boss. So yeah, maybe tell me your version of Draconic Tree Sentinel.
Yeah, man. Y'all got anything else? Because I think it's about time we wrap up.
I'm good.
I'm good.
I think if you haven't played it, you should play it, and if you have played it again.
Yeah, I mean, it's the perfect time right now.
It really is. It really is. But with that being said, guys, thank you so much for watching this special episode. We are very passionate about this video game, and we're glad that we're able to talk about it now, especially at this time, because we're about to get the DLC. We're growing hype for it. But with that being said, guys, this has been our episode on Elden Ring, FromSoft's masterpiece. With that being said, thank you so much for watching. Catch you later.
Goodbye.
Goodbye, fellow Tarnished.
Goodbye.